But think of falling in love for a moment. The prince and the princess, or the prince and Cinderella. Cinderella has nothing except she's everything that the prince would want. She's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And the prince, she has nothing. The prince has everything that would rescue her tragic situation. She falls in love. He falls in love. Why? Because each has what the other so needs and wants with all their heart. Are they both selfish? They both have a self-need, majorly. And they realize this other person can satisfy that need. And hopefully, in overwhelming gratitude, each will be devoted to the needs of the other. And they have plenty to give. She her beauty, him his wealth. So to help in this dramatic process, we pretend that the maiden is weak and helpless, even in poverty, but beautiful, and that the man is tough and soldierly and masculine, macho, but strong and protective and able to provide. Society stereotypes its young men and women accordingly to emulate such posture, to help in the process. That they fall madly in love with each other. They need each other. Each falls in love because of their need. And the satisfying of that need gives overwhelming gratitude. That they each give their life to each other. Quite simply, they are two selfish individuals that trade. And the trade is very worthwhile to both of them. And they're so glad at this trade that they are most utterly benevolent to each other and give of themselves. Bless them. It is the understanding, then, of falling in love that gives you what the best relationship is, and also instructs you where and when it can fall apart. My dad did not lose his wealth. My mum did not lose her looks. Even at 40, she won an international newspaper competition to have her portrait painted by a well-known artist called Nicholas Egan. I mean, things didn't work out, so in the actual painting, there was some sort of argument and discord going on between my mother and the artist. And Dad, of course, comes to the rescue. Lovely, how wonderful. I can pay for her to be painted anyway. I don't need her to have someone else do it. Because, you see, he loves her. He was going to spend his money on her as necessary. I mean, he's very Victorian. She, on the other hand, though beautiful, had gone off him. Was not sharing her beauty with him. quite simply, wouldn't share the same bed with him, wouldn't share the same room with him. What had gone wrong with the marriage? Perhaps she'd forgotten that the lovely standard of living that she was in was utterly dependent on his loving her, and that if she didn't meet his need, this would cause discord. Not that he wouldn't still want and long for her, but that his needs were not going to be met, and this would cause unhappiness and strife. And she, of course, maintained that he was not being loving enough, and that's why she withdrew her favours, if you like. Perhaps she didn't enjoy making love to him anyway and found it repellent because she'd stopped loving him. She'd stopped valuing him as a wonderful gift of God, rescuing her from a very poor standard of living into a very good one. Rich, really. How could you put the relationship right? Well, they both need to revise, review, revisit their position vis-à-vis each other and what their true needs are, and be open to each other about such. She felt that his working life left her with an intolerably lonely and inferior position. Quite simply, he should spend more good time with her, whereas the small amount of time they spend with each other, basically weekends, bits of weekends, turn into a nightmare of criticism. They were actually good with each other when they were socialising. They both enjoyed socialising. To some extent, they both enjoyed the cinema. Not necessarily quite the same films, but of course very little communication in that sort of situation. Whereas officers' dances, balls, oh, that was good. Restaurant meals out, that was successful. Mum hated cooking because it was very stressed. I mean, she enjoyed cooking with me, but cooking for Dad was a stress because it had to be right, and it had to be on time, and incredibly regular. So cooking time was a great stress, and a time for hatred. You know, she would mutter, I hate him, in the kitchen while she cooked. I mean, semi in fun, but also in truth. They were good when they went for drives with each other and go to country pubs and have a drink and socialise. Unless it was filled with criticism with each other, in which case it was a disaster, of course, and they might shout at each other all the way home. They were pretty good visiting people, socialising together. You know, families go to so-and-so's for the afternoon. Bit boring for me, unless there's a kiddie to play with. But I quite enjoyed it. In consequence of the relationship, Mum focused more and more on me. Well, that didn't help relationship with Dad, did it? But you know, if they went to an officer's ball, I would go to Grant's for the night, 6 miles away on the bus. And, well, I quite enjoyed that. Gran was incredibly old-fashioned. You can't believe how old-fashioned that house was and her way of living. There was a maid days in the scullery, which is the room next to the kitchen, because that's where all her life and work was. And the two old ladies didn't socialise with each other. They were both alone in the house. It was this terrible class divide, you see. It was a tragedy that Dad was so Victorian and old-fashioned, and Mum was so New Age and modern. I mean, we are talking about the 1950s, you understand, and the 60s. To return to what's of value to you. Yes, love is a trade, falling in love. Two, if you like, selfish individuals that meet someone that so meets their needs that their selfishness goes out the window. And in this sudden expansion of self to embrace so fully someone else, their joy, their peace, their pleasure just goes through the ceiling, escalates. Why? Because they see the other as so perfectly meeting all they ever wanted. Just to sit with this other person is to be with the solution to your great needs. How lovely. Make sure you remain the solution to your partner's needs. Otherwise, you may even just be together, but you've lost the relationship, and your own needs will start to mount. And in the end, one or both of you will seek refuge in some other way, possibly by finding some alternative partner, but possibly simply by leaving the joint dwelling, parting company, in order to be at least relieved of some of the problems and needs that they have, which from their point of view you are now generating. Of course, it may be you can't do anything about it. I mean, you were beautiful but now have lost your looks. Or you were wealthy but you become bankrupt. If the love were strong, the partner won't go. The gratitude lasts forever. Especially if the loss you've suffered of looks or wealth or ability, you may have both become handicapped in some way, either of you, will be embraced in thankfulness, because it's not your fault in some way, it's just what happens in life, for rich or for poorer, for better or for worse. Their gratitude, their loyalty, from the love you have shared, will increase the love for each other greater than it ever was. You will know the riches of truly having fallen in love. If not, it will be a transitory affair. Just an affair. Just an affair. Perhaps one of you is determined to make good of it, but the other is not. And no matter what you do, the other is not. Well, that's the way it is, I'm afraid. But God loves you. And you can be blissfully happy in gratitude just to God. You don't need a princess or a knight in shining armor. Just someone who truly loves you and is able to meet all your needs. Your dad that loves you. Your heavenly dad. your eternal friend. Bless you, and thank you, Dad. What has happened in the late 20th, 21st century? We've taken away her need. After all, she'll manage on benefit even if she could work herself. Taken away her looks. She's wearing clothing that doesn't accentuate her beautiful shape. Or if it does it crudely, and her shapes become appalling because she's on a diet that makes her the wrong shape. And if she's a Kiwi, for instance, she wears black. Maybe very smart for the office, but it's not scintillatingly attractive, lovely. Her femininity has been overruled by a culture of unisex. His masculinity has equally been reduced to some unisex too. It's possibly reduced to not being able to find a job. That doesn't help. He can't provide. So she can't meet his need, and he can't meet hers. Partly because she doesn't have a need to meet, and he doesn't have the wherewithal that would meet it anyway. They still come together because of the story that's played out to them in their culture. That if you don't have a partner, in some sense, you're not acceptable. Who's your boyfriend? Who's your girlfriend? I don't have one. Oh, that's rotten. Is it? No, not really. No, doesn't make much difference, does it? Still go to the party, can't we? Yeah. Do you see? You've wonderfully taken away needs. Of course you have marriage problems. What's the need for marriage? You've destroyed it. I don't mean deliberately, but inadvertently. It's come upon you by possibly something to do with your technology. Mum, I've just fallen in love with an unemployed nerd. Dad, I found a girlfriend who hates men. Oh, well, good luck to that, mate. It's needs that drive love and relationships. From the gratitude that springs from each meeting the other's needs, that gives the loyalty on which marriage is founded. And without that loyalty, well, marriages are a thing of the past. And you may say, well, that's all right. After all, the needs aren't there. Why do we need needs? We need needs to give us purpose. And our creativity in solving that great need brings joy and relationship. And it is relationship. It's what we are. We are human, not robotic. I can't can't just leave you in a cupboard for weeks and then take you out and find you function just as well. You need continual relationship maintenance. The care of your friends and partners. So we abandon the desire for marriage and choose simply friendships instead. But they are not lasting. They are not intense in the way that falling in love is intense. The fabric of life, human interaction, has been undermined by an artificial solution to need. Artificial in that it's our technology that's rescued us. To the extent that our need for each other has declined drastically. We substitute more technology, mind-numbing media and so on, perhaps sport activities, endless travel, eating, drinking, perhaps drugs. And we lose that permanent relationship called marriage, which was fundamental to our humanity and psyche. We could, you think, switch to devotion to God. That would give us our long-run relationship permanence. Our mastery of technology and knowledge tells us there is no God to turn to. We choose to believe and trust in our disaster, and that's disastrous. We are not going to turn humanity back to maidens and knights in shining armour. It's God or nothing. Choose you this day whom you will serve. Thank you, Dad.